Good morning and welcome back to our Support Now podcast. I'm thrilled to be meeting again with someone who I now consider a friend, but truly a wonderful human, an ambassador of Support Now, and someone with an incredible story, which we're going to get into today. I'm joined by Kasie Marek. Hey, Kasie.
Hi, Jordan. So excited to be here. And I'm just so excited that we connected. And yeah, we're definitely friends now.
Yeah, we're friends. We're friends. We're on a texting basis now. Part of why I wanted to invite Kasie to the podcast is she has her journey is one that I find just to be totally fascinating. Typically, we highlight support from one point of view. Maybe it's someone that's been through something hard themselves, or perhaps someone, a mom in particular, supporting a child or a spouse. Casey's actually experienced really it all, and there's so many beautiful characteristics about her, but so much of the way I believe that you live and lead your life is based off of all of these experiences. And so since her journey and her story is so there's a lot of layers to this, we're going to break this podcast up into a couple of series so that we really give time and space for all of it. So today we're going to be focusing on Casey's individual health journey and talking a little bit about her experience, what that was like, how she received support at that moment, and then in future episodes, we'll dive into kind of the part 2 because there is many more layers to this. So, Casey, before I start asking you a whole bunch of questions, I would love for you to share just a little bit more about you for those that aren't following you on Instagram or might not know you, personally.
Yeah, I'm a mom now. I have three children. I just had my last baby, a little girl, 3 months ago now. I'm married and my journey started when I was 13. I was diagnosed with cancer. And so that's really shaped who I am today. I've went through many different seasons and I was diagnosed with cancer and then I really wanted to find the purpose in life and that became my organization, Kasie Helps Kids, where I was wanting to give back and that just gave me purpose and maybe it was healing for me as well of why I was going through all of these health struggles. And so, yeah, I'm a mom and just that's also a whole other complex story as well. I have a son, my firstborn, who had a heart condition, and of course, like Jordan mentioned, we'll go through that another episode. But it's been really wild to like look back at the last 20 years now and just see the full picture of wow, I had went through this medical journey, and then I also walked along so many other families and moms go through their journeys with their children, fighting cancer and many other life-threatening illnesses, and then becoming a mom with a chronically ill child. So yeah, it's just like the full circle moment to look back
Yeah.
and realize, wow, this is maybe why I went through these struggles and walked alongside these women. And it's definitely made me who I am today and be the mother I am to Noah and advocate for him like I do today.
So, Casey, let's go back. Let's go back to your 12-year-old self. What were you like? Tell me a little bit more about your personality, your activities, the things you loved. I would love to start there.
Yeah, 12 years old. My family and I, it was just me living at home. My sister and I are 13 years apart. So she was already out of the house, married, living somewhere else. And so my mom and dad and I had actually just moved to Florida. We went through a house fire in 2003. And so we lost everything at our home in Texas. So that's where I was born. I was born in Texas, and then the house fire, we lost everything. So my mom's family was in Alabama, Georgia area, and so we actually ended up moving to Florida to be closer to them. They were getting older, and then my mom ended up relocating at her job. She worked for the airlines. So we moved to Florida, to Pensacola, Florida, and I was 11 at the time, and switching schools, hard age, figuring out it's middle school. I just feel like it's a really hard age. Everyone's going through those seasons of life and you're maturing, and I had a really difficult time making that transition, starting a new school, making friends. But yeah, I'd say I was pretty outgoing. I was a cheerleader for my school and played tennis. And on the weekends, I would hang out at home, jump on the trampoline. We had a four-wheeler, we had a lot of space. We lived in the country. And yeah, I would just say I was a pretty normal kid.
So talk me through, how did you know? How did you find out? Were there symptoms? What did you feel? I think so many people just have like natural curiosity around how someone so active and living a typical life can then suddenly become a victim of cancer.
Looking back now again, there was many odd signs from years prior to that. I used to have really bad chest pain and racing heart starting at about 8 years old, and my mom would take me to the doctor trying to figure out what it was. Ultimately, nothing came back as anything, everything was benign. And then later on, we moved to Florida. And again, going through so many changes, I had so much anxiety as well. Like I was starting to have like really bad panic attacks. But again, it's a normal thing at that age, right? You're just going through so many changes. And then I was having a lot of GI issues. Like I was really hungry, but then I would get sick afterwards. So my mom was, like, concerned about anorexia, but I really just couldn't hold things down, and so I was pretty underweight. I was about, like at that age, I was 13 or 12, 13, and a little less than, like, 80 pounds. So just, like, very thin. Yeah, like, just those little signs, but we would have never thought it was cancer, and then I had really bad psoriasis and eczema all down my arms to the point where I was, like, patches of just bloody, dry skin. So I'd wear jackets because I was so insecure about it. That was, like, another sign of just thyroid issues in general. But again, we were going to the doctor, everything was tapping out fine. We just had no idea. The day came when we found the big lump, and I was 12. I was jumping on the trampoline with a friend. It was the weekend, and I remember the exact moment like it was yesterday, and I remember just, like, feeling my neck, and it was truly like an orange was stuck on my neck, and I'm like, "Oh gosh, what is that?" Didn't hurt. It just was just this huge lump, and, of
Wow.
course, everyone else is my friend who I'm with is like, "Oh, yeah, I see that. Wow." Like, I didn't notice that at first, but now you're like, "It's huge." My mom's, "Okay, maybe you're having an allergic reaction," and we were in the pool, and then we were in the trampoline, and so she's, "Let's just, like, keep an eye on it. I'll give you some Tylenol or something. Let's see if it helps." I ended up going to the doctor that next week, just to a pediatrician, and she's, "This is definitely a thyroid issue. It's a goiter, but you're really young. You're only 12, so it's just I haven't really
Mm.
seen this." So she refers us to a specialist, and we go to the specialist, and they do blood work, and I remember screaming like a little baby, kicking my feet, getting blood work done, which is just so insane to think about because I watched Noah go through it so much. I'm just like, "Oh my goodness." It was terrifying. I'm being poked, and now I'm going to see all these
Yeah.
specialists, and right away, they're like, "Yeah, it's thyroid. We're gonna put you on medication to see if this goes down, but we're gonna also need to biopsy it." So I went in, I guess it was probably a couple weeks later to get a biopsy. I was sedated, but it's still awake. So I remember also that day fully like it was yesterday. And the pain, it was very painful. And we got the biopsy, and it came back a couple weeks later as suspicious. So it was inconclusive. And I went to see the doctor to go over the results. She was like, "You're so young. The chances of you having cancer is so slim at this age. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen a case like this. You could get your thyroid removed surgically, but then you're going to live without a thyroid for the rest of your life, which comes with its own complications. Or you could not have surgery, but there is a chance that it could also still be cancer, and you have to decide." Yeah, we just decided about a couple of months later that we would go forward with the surgery. And thyroid cancer is a slower cancer, so it wasn't something we were like, "Okay, we have to decide tomorrow." And again, in the back of our heads, we're like, "There's no way, it's cancer." And I was 12, so I'm like, "Whatever, cancer, I'll get it removed, or I'll take some medicine, it'll be gone." I just had no idea. Ultimately ended up having surgery on July 25th of 2005, and it was supposed to be just a couple hour surgery, which it ultimately ended up being about 8 hours. And back then too, technology and just the communication even with hospitals and doctors was so much slower, and sending off the biopsy and getting the results back, and then we ultimately found out it was cancer. So they had to remove quite a bit of other things from where the cancer had spread into lymph nodes and my parathyroid, and yeah, 8 hours, got out of surgery. I remember when my mom told me I had cancer, And I just was, "Okay." I think too, you have to think, like, 2005, we didn't have cell phones like we do now. We didn't have Instagram and Facebook, and I feel like now a 12-year-old is exposed to a lot of much more aware because you see TikToks of sick children, and that wasn't the case then. So I really just I had no idea. And so I started treatment about a week later, and it thyroid cancer is typically treated with radioactive iodine, and so I had a large dose. When you're radioactive, you can't be around anyone, so I ended up getting treatments and was on isolation for about 5 days until my body was not radioactive anymore. So the doctors would come in with these huge metal suits and with a detector, and again, 2005, we didn't have iPads and things. We had a VCR and arts and crafts. So I remember just being so bored. I definitely felt really crummy. So I sat in the shower for hours at a time, just trying to get the radiation to seep out of me. Overall, like in comparison, I know I was very lucky, right? I had surgery and then I got to have an overall pretty easy treatment plan. And then after that, I had a clear scan. The surgery and the radiation ended up getting rid of the cancer. I did go back for a yearly scan a year later, and the doctor called and said, "Hey, we have hot spots again. You need to come in. We need to do treatments again." So I remember it being homecoming, my first homecoming week, and I ended up being back in the hospital, full isolation, a full treatment again. Yeah, that was hard because it was like the first time where I'm in high school and having to go through this again, and I got really sick during that treatment. And at the time, and I love both of my oncologists and my endocrinologist. I'm still extremely close with them, but at the time there was just so little research about thyroid cancer at such a young age. So the treatments that I was getting was that of a 300-pound man. It was the same treatment, and I was an 80 pound adolescent.
Yeah.
And so we ultimately ended up trying to get into MD Anderson, which at the time took a long time to get into. It was a process, it took months at a time. So I went through the treatments because we felt my mom at that time was like, "This is what we have to do. This is the doctor saying we need to do these treatments." So I went in, did the treatments, got pretty sick. That one was really hard for me. It took a lot longer for me to get the radiation out of my body just because I was so sick to my stomach and vomiting and couldn't eat. Got through it, got a clear scan again. And a few months later, ended up going to MD Anderson, where I still go now. And I actually was there yesterday. And so I started going to MD Anderson, and they were like, "Oh, we would not have recommended the second scan. It was way too much radiation for your body, and you may start to see some effects in 5 to 10 years." And of course, at that time, I'm just like, "Okay, whatever. We'll see. What are the odds?" And yeah, sure enough, over the last next few years, I just started having a lot of I lost all my saliva glands completely, like the radiation just fried them. So I'm still even working through that. But that ultimately resulted in me losing all of my teeth and 25 hours worth of dental work.
Wow.
That's something that I still struggle with, and I have a bladder condition from the treatments, from sitting in my bladder. It, cracked the walls of my bladder, so I had to have surgery on my bladder. Just lots of things, and then, of course, living without a thyroid. It's a whole new normal, just extreme fatigue or extreme anxiety, and it really does control so much of your hormones in so much of your body, your eyesight, your skin, your hair. And so it's just been a journey, but ultimately I'm very blessed. I know, and I've watched so many other children go through cancer and know that my treatments and all of that relatively were so much easier. But not to say that it has not been very difficult. And again, I still go through the yearly scans. I still have the anxiety of, oh my gosh, what if there's still a lot of higher chance of getting a secondary cancer? And yeah, it's been a journey.
Thank you for sharing all that. I One of the things that's really interesting that you said that I want to go back to is that when you got it when you were 12, almost like this suspense of disbelief. You're too young to really understand the gravity of what it could mean. And I think it's an interesting perspective to look back on that and think there a lot of information was gated from me in a good way, which is very
Yes.
different, like you mentioned, to families and children and teenagers that would get cancer now, where the amount of information, the access to the information is overwhelming. I think it's a really good reminder just in general that having access to information can be good, and it can also be harmful because it sounds like you were in, like, in a mental state at that point where, not to say you wrote it off, but you're like, "Cool, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna do the surgery. I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm gonna beat this thing," and you moved on from it instead of dwelling in it and giving it too much space to affect your mind and your
Yeah.
spirit. Is that right?
Yeah, I think at that time, yes, 100%, 12, 13, and again, as technology immersed, as Facebook started becoming a thing, as we started connecting more with the world, at about 17, 18, when I first moved away for college and really took control over my body and all of my doctor's appointments and really had to taking my medication every day. And again, yes, social media was much more of a thing. I struggled
Yeah.
so bad with hypochondriac, anxiety, panic attacks all of the time, and it really controlled my life. And so that was such a probably about 3 years of just debilitating, like, mental state of, "Oh my gosh." And 2, I had my organization at this point, and so I was very much involved with the cancer community, and I did lose so many friends to cancer, and so I think it just became so much I became so much more aware of the reality of the situation and maybe was a little too aware of what could happen. And not even just with the cancer that I had, but all of the other cancers and all the other illnesses that there are. Yeah, it was pretty difficult as social media and as I became more aware, as I became connected even too with support groups and with that community. It was great in a lot of aspects, but it also did some harm to me personally as well.
So, question on this for families that you know who have a teenager or a young adult that gets cancer, what are some pieces of advice that you give to parents? Because again, it is very different now. They're navigating extremely different waters with just again the amplification of information and devices.
Just trying to have a lot of conversations and being honest, answering a lot of questions. I feel like for me personally, like in my parents, it was such an elephant in the room. We never talked about it. It wasn't something we just never discussed. And so I feel like maybe if I would have asked more questions or explained like how I was actually feeling and the thoughts I was having, maybe that would have been more helpful. And also just knowing, I think this with Noah too, like he has so many questions now. And I'm like, maybe I'm not the one to answer them. Maybe it is time to get a professional. And so I have a professional that I go to help me, even for me to answer those questions appropriately, because what I don't want to do is ever cause more anxiety for him. I want to be the one to calm him but also to be honest. I never want to lie and say this is not possible or he has had friends that have passed now from congenital heart disease. I want to be honest. And so I think that's one of the main things is just having that communication, that open line of communication.
It sounds like as you've gotten older, as you've matured, you're certainly more aware of just what cancer means in all the ways. How do you manage your anxiety today around that? Because so much of what have learned from women like you is that you can be a survivor and you can be in remission. And in some ways, that can be even harder because of
Mhm.
the fear of return. So, how do you manage that anxiety and that stress?
In this moment right now, honestly, I'm just so busy and I don't have much time to worry about it, but
Yeah.
I have found that on the days where I am calmer and where I'm just sitting, I do start to really my mind starts to race on all of the what ifs and now especially, right? I'm a mom. What would my kids do and my family do if I was not here? And so of course I do have anxiety, but it's a lot less frequent because I'm so busy. But now I think I just if there's anything in particular that hurts or that's causing me a lot of anxiety, I'm like, "Okay, what will it take for me to be at peace and know that I'm okay?" If it's something that's really starting to bother me or really anxious about it, I'm very in tune with my body, and so I always just reach out to the doctor, ask the question, "Hey, can should we get this tested?" Because if I don't, then I will start to just spiral about it. And I think sometimes too, it's hard because you feel crazy, right? Oh, I don't want it to seem like I'm just being overreactive or crazy about this, but that's never the case typically. We get so much in our own heads. And so I think just asking the questions and really seeking within of what will make me feel better and just following through with that.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, and I think the fact that you are a mom of 3, life moves very quickly. I'm a mom of 3, and it's hard to sit in a single thought because there's just things that need to happen, and in some ways, that is a blessing because you have to keep going. Typically, when we have time to sit, that we get lost in our thoughts, and, again, I think this
Yes.
happens more to women and moms where, like, you can go to a more negative place faster. And the beauty of children is that they don't let you sit in much at all, physically, emotionally, I mean, because the emotions and their swings are just so radical.
But not everyone has lots of kids and all of the crazy schedule and yeah, I think it's just, fine we're all so different, right? And we handle stress so different. I have found for me personally that being busy is what works for me.
Yeah, it's like your coping strategy.
Yes, and right now, that is the season I'm in. I think that there will be another season when I don't have the kids at home and things are less busy, and I'll have to find something that is healthy to cope with. So whether it be playing sport or going to yoga, like there are things. So I think that's just is finding each individually what works for you.
Thank you, Casey. Again, part one, I'm so excited to continue the conversation because so much of your journey, I feel like you leverage and maximize into the next part of your life and the next phase of your life and becoming a mom. So we will absolutely dive into, honestly, just the experience, both the trauma that you experienced as a child and then how that began to transfer as you became a mom, handling a new type of hard and what that feels like, which is, I think, different than how you felt as a kid. So I look forward to continuing the conversation. This is the cliffhanger we'll end on. And thank you, as always, for your time. I recognize you are a busy mama, and we will be back soon with more information.
Awesome. Thank you. Can't wait.